It's the summer of 1518, and something truly odd swept through Strasbourg. Hundreds of people started dancing wildly in the streets and just couldn't stop, sometimes for days on end. This bizarre occurrence raises questions about social pressure, collective behavior, and the nature of mass hysteria. Historians and scientists still can't quite agree on what caused this strange episode. Some blame food poisoning or psychological factors, while others think the stress and the hardship of the times played a big part. Hey there, story lovers. Welcome to the Storytelling Podcast, your cozy corner for captivating tales. I am your host, Alejandra, and today we are talking about this strange occurrence that happened in Strasbourg, in France, in 1518 that killed hundreds of people. A strange mass hysteria that serves as a case study for mental health, science, and social interactions. But before we start, I would like to ask for your support and click on the follow or the subscribe button if you're hearing this episode on YouTube or any podcast platform. I would really appreciate that, and thank you for the lovely reviews that you have been leaving on the podcast. It means the world to me. Now let's get starting. Medieval Strasbourg buzzed with life, shaped by its unique history and the broader currents of medieval Europe. Social, economic, and political forces all left their marks on daily existence. Life back then was cold and rough. Most folks lived in small villages and worked on land, while all the privileged few belonged to the nobility. Everything revolved around the seasons and the rhythms of farming. Harvest was a big deal, and neighbors often pitched in together. Religion was everywhere. The church shaped both private lives and the community as a whole. Cities started growing as trade routes expanded. Markets became the heart of city life, offering new goods and opportunities. And places like Strasbourg began to develop their own urban identities, very different from countryside. Back in 1518, Strasbourg was a lively city in the Holy Roman Empire, sitting right on the Rhine River. Its location made it a hotspot for trade. The city was famous for its bustling markets and rich culture. Ideas and traditions mixed freely, and the Gothic cathedral loomed over the skyline. Strasbourg people came from all the walks in life: merchants, craftsmen, farmers. This mix made a vibrant social scene. Festivals and public gatherings happened often, so the city rarely felt dull. The Middle Ages, stretching from the 5th to the late 15th century, brought huge changes to Europe. After the fall of Rome, the land broke into a patchwork of kingdoms and fiefdoms. Feudalism took over, with kings, nobles, and peasants all locked in their roles. Big events like the Crusades and the rise of towns changed the map. Trade picked up, and some cities grew wealthy and powerful. The Catholic Church still held a tight grip on everything and everyday life and politics. It's not hard to imagine how this tense and unpredictable environment could set the stage for something as wild as a dancing plague. So in July of 1518 in Strasbourg, the dancing plague broke out, with dozens of people dancing uncontrollably for days and shaking up the whole community. When to speak about the chronology of the events, it started in July, with Frau, so Mrs. Trofia, began dancing in the street. Within a week, others joined her, and soon the crowd grew up to 400 people. People kept going without rest, and some collapsing for sheer exhaustion. Authorities, desperate to help, even set up a wooden stage, hoping it would calm things down. So there is something going on and you put on a stage. Cool thinking. Instead, many dancers got sick and some didn't survive. By September, remember this started in July, and by September, the dancing faded, leaving the city stunned and confused. Frau Trofia kicked off the whole ordeal, dancing with no music and barely seeming aware of herself. Eyewitnesses claimed that the dancers looked like they were in some sort of a trance and couldn't stop moving. One local physician blamed hot blood insisting it was a medical disorder, not something spiritual. Townspeople's stories paint a picture of fear, confusion, and the desperate search for answer as they watch their friends and family swept into chaos. It, it could have been hard to watch that. The dancing plague hit Strasbourg hard. Families were left reeling as loved ones collapsed from exhaustion. Crowds gathered, drawn by curiosity and fear, while the city's economy took a hit. People abandoned their work to join the madness. Join the madness is quite not the word that I wanted to use here because who wants to join the madness? Even after the dancing stopped, the memory haunted the city. It forced people to question health, behavior, and how social forces messes with your minds. Still today, right? Now, for those who don't know about mass hysteria or collective behavior, mass hysteria happens when big groups of people suddenly share symptoms of behaviors, even though there is no physical causes. So it's like a mirror for tensions, for emotions bubbling under the surface. And the collective behavior can pop in all sorts of situations, leading to shared delusions or actions. And in hindsight, it seems baffling. So basically, even though mass hysteria or collective behavior can make you see or hear what it's not there, you know what I mean? So it's sometimes it's not true, but it's related to mind and emotions and all the instability that you feel inside. Another thing that mass hysteria is also called is mass psychogenic illnesses, which shows up when a group develops symptoms with no medical explanation. And all this increase of emotions can bring dizziness, faintings, or wild movements, and it usually spreads fast, especially because there is stress and anxiety running high in the community. So you have physical symptoms like headaches, fatigues, and so on, or emotional triggers like stressful events that normally happens, and it spreads quickly. Actually, the symptoms jumps from person to person in no time, and this happens. This is real, and it's wild how we can influence each other, especially when emotions run high. And just to give you some examples that actually happened, and it's more close than the 1518. But for example, the pact of the satanic panic in the 1980s, or for example, when the sparking of fear and irrational behavior. For example, when people were listening to the War of the Worlds broadcast in the radio, and some listeners really believed that Martians were invading. If you don't know that, I'm actually going to make an episode on this because it's insane how people actually believe that the War of the Worlds, the book from Orson Welles, was real. They were so immersed in the storytelling on the radio that because people didn't have TVs, there weren't no TVs back then. They were listening on the radio. They had soap operas on the radio, if you don't know, and they were listening, and it was so immersive that they actually believed that. It's kind of funny if we thought about that. Or the Great Moon hoax, which newspapers actually convinced that there was life on the moon. I need to make an episode about this. Wouldn't you agree? But yeah, while it's kind of amazing, it's a little scary because it actually shares beliefs of what us humans can do to other humans and to mess up with other minds, and this is scary. Now, about the role of psychology in this is that how groups shape what we do and think. It's the key of understanding why mass hysteria and the collective behavior happens. Group dynamics, social influence, or fear and anxiety, where everyone is anxious. For example, if you're in a group and something happens to someone and everyone is anxious and things start spiraling fast, or for example, if your friends or peers can make you make the wrong choice. So this is a collective behavior, actually. This is just a side note so you understand what mass hysteria and collective behavior can be on this dancing plague. This is just a side note. Now, on my side, I have a theory about this dancing plague, but for the sake of the whole perspective of views and because everyone is different to think about what they want, I included several theories behind this dancing plague. Okay, so there is a lot of toss of bunch of histories and theories about explaining the 1518 dancing plague, and some point out to medical reasons, which is what I think, while others focus on culture and religion. For example, as a scientific and biological explanation, one of the popular theories blames ergot poisoning. So people ate rye bread, which was infected with ergot fungus. Um, Back then, 1518, you didn't have any chemicals to remove all the infections and to sterilize the product, so makes sense. And when you ingest this kind of fungus, the ergot fungus, which is still today, they actually act like it's similar to LSD. So you have hallucinations and muscle spasms. Another idea is that it was all psychological. So what a person freaked out from all the stress or fear, and others quickly catch on the vibe. And given how tough life was in Strasbourg, maybe collective anxiety just boiled over. So this is like the scientific explanation that some share. Others focus on cultural and religious influences. The beliefs in the time mattered too. So plenty of folks thought supernatural forces were at work, witchcraft, and that dancing might please angry spirits or drive away demons. Religious was fervor and ran high on the late Middle Ages, and sometimes people dance as a spiritual act, a way of letting go and connecting with divine. They were actually they think that they were actually getting into a trance to connect with God, for example. Some examples are, for example, shamans or Ubanda. There are several cultures and religions that actually use dancing to connect to the spiritual. The dancing plague in 1518 left a strange mark on culture and society. Artists and writers couldn't resist the story. Who can? Because it's so different. And the wild scenes from the plague inspired plenty of paintings. Artists tried to capture the raw emotions and the chaos that gripped Strasbourg. Writers ran with it too. They use choreomania as a symbol for unrest or deeper fears. Some fictional stories even featured characters overtaken by uncontrollable dancing and exploring ideas of madness and the power of the crowd. If we talk about social and religious practice, back then, this event shook up the church, and communities scrambled for answers, turning to priests and healers. Many believed that the plague was divine punishment, so they organized public prayers and processions. It also got people talking about mental health, not what we use by now, not using the words mental health, but still, over the time, it nudged conversations about how society shaped their minds. But while mass hysteria isn't unique to Strasbourg, it sparked bizarre behaviors, and I collected a couple of them that happened during the centuries. So we have Strasbourg 1518, where there are dancing mania, and there was another dancing mania, but wasn't so talked about. It was taken in Cologne, in Germany, in 1374, so it was before, and a crowd hit the streets, convinced they were cursed or possessed. And while this stress was part of the famine and disease, it was another idea of collective madness. They thought they were cursed. Another one of mass hysteria, and this is something that it's touches very dearly to me, is the Salem witch trials. And on the Salem witch trials, US, 1692, there was another famous case. So, Salem, Massachusetts, a couple of young girls claimed that the witches possessed them, and sparking a frenzy of accusations and trials. This was actually how, not the start, but in the beginning of the Salem witch trials. I'm going to make probably 2 episodes on this. Um, so these young girls claimed they were possessed by witches and started to pointing out fingers to people they didn't like, basically. They were lying. And fear and social tension fueled the chaos and the accusations, and we know how it ended. Many people see the trials as a product of deeper anxieties and the dangers of group thinking, and it's true. It's the way how things spiral in Salem, and it shows how fear can take over a community. But don't think the mass hysteria was just before. It pops up online all the time. Social media just loves how collective fear and reactions, the the fake news, the bad videos, the AI videos now being done. And for example, there was this challenge back then, the Blue Whale Challenge. I don't know if you remember back in 2016, and it was tied to several tragic events. Please don't do it. Don't go with the cattle, please. Young people got pulled up into these games that encourage self-harm. And to be honest, the internet can be a wild place, honestly. But back in the medieval times, let's go back. Folks leaned on supernatural beliefs to explain anything mysterious. Ghosts, spirits, and all sorts of unexplained phenomena shaped up how people made sense around the dancing plague in Strasbourg. They actually believed that ghosts and spirits were everywhere in the medieval culture. And people figured that these entities could mess up with the living, which sparked both fear and curiosity. Ghosts were often described as souls with unfinished business or a grudge to settle. Folktales love to tell all spirits showing up to warn and punish someone. These stories definitely influenced what communities did. Folks tried to keep spirits happy with rituals and offerings. And spiritual leaders stepped in to guide everyone through this belief. Sometimes this was the only way to keep things from getting out of hand during tough times. With this, the legends and local lore gave everyday life a strange supernatural flavor. Folks swapped stories about bizarre events, spontaneous dancing, old odds, illnesses that they chalked up to something otherworldly. So they were blaming that a ghost did it, that they were possessed. And these tales tended to grow wilder with each retelling. Soon enough, the line between what actually really happened and the people imagined got pretty fuzzy. And I found a lot of strange things online about this, and that's why I didn't put the majority of them, because I don't actually know if they were true or not. I wasn't there. People continuing to add to the historical events, like in this case, of course, the dancing plague, all sort of supernatural. Nowadays, if you search about the dancing plague, the majority of them will blame it on supernatural, and there is thousands of stories around the dancing plague, why it started, the prequel of dancing plague. But I think that we need to look logic, and I think that probably this was all just because of a piece of bread, brown bread, of rye bread, that had a bacteria. And that is my take. I think it was the bread, and I'm going to blame it the bread. And I do love bread. So let's keep our breads non-moldy, shall we? And this was today's episode, guys. And I hope you liked it. It was definitely good research about a historic topic that we don't hear much. And I always try to bring topics that are either unknown or not so talked. So I just want to keep it interesting, don't you think? And comment below and share your thoughts. It's always nice to hear from you guys, and I promise that I have other episodes ready for you here weekly at Storytelling Podcasts. Thank you for listening, and please remember that if you would like to send your stories or special topics to be shared in the next episode, please send it to thestorytellingpodcast8080@gmail.com, or follow me on social media at Alejandra Fonseca Official or at AleLife Official. And before you go, if you haven't done already, I would love for you to click on the follow or the subscribe button, and see you on the next episode.